Hey, it's Angela from the blog AngelaMarieMade.com. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to share with you 7 easy tips to get started with woodworking, and hopefully I'm going to share them in a really easy way so they are a breeze to understand and you can get to the fun part of actually starting to woodwork. Alright, let's get started. Tip number 1 is to create a simple woodworking setup. You don't need a fancy workshop or even a garage to get started with woodworking. In fact, we've never had a garage. We always just use a pair of sawhorses with a plywood board on top of it to do woodworking. Now, if you do have a garage or shed space, I would recommend setting up a small woodworking area there so that you don't have to set up and take down your woodworking station every time. Tip number 2 is to learn how to read a tape measure. Now, I know this sounds really simple and you might already know how to do this already, but just hear me out on this one. Oftentimes in woodworking, we have to make really special cuts that aren't always even cuts, like 15 inches or 15.5 inches. Sometimes we have to make really specific cuts like 15 and 9/16 of an inch or 15 inches and 3/8 of an inch. So really knowing how to read a tape measure in its entirety is important and it'll be really helpful. And I actually have a really easy printable that you can download for free and keep handy so that you can always reference it in case you forget how to read one. It's available on my blog and I will link it below for you. Also, I do recommend getting an easy read tape measure. It makes a huge difference as well. Tip number 3 is to understand lumber dimensions and species. There are many different kinds of wood and they are categorized as softwoods and hardwoods. Softwood examples include pine, cedar, spruce, and some hardwood examples include oak, mahogany, maple, walnut, the list goes on. Every different species of wood has different unique traits and characteristics about it, but overall what you'll find in DIY woodworking online and at your local home improvement store is that pine and the white softwoods are really common and very affordable. They're a great type of wood to get started with when you're doing woodworking, and I would recommend using those. And then as you get more experience, definitely try out different kinds of wood, other kinds of hardwoods, and you can check out your local lumber store for an even broader selection of wood species. So first, understanding softwood lumber dimensions will be really helpful when it comes to most woodworking plans that you find, and also when you go shopping for your lumber, and just understanding the general measurements of your project. A 1x2 does not actually measure 1 inches by 2 inches. That's the nominal size. The actual size is 3¼ inches thick by 1½ inches wide. But don't worry, I have another free printable for you that you can download on my blog. I'll link it below this video, and it's just a handy chart showing nominal versus actual softwood lumber sizes. Tip number 4 is to always use the straightest boards that you can when it comes to woodworking. When it comes to pick out the boards for your project, try to use the straightest boards you can find and avoid warped or bowed boards. This may require a bit of picking and digging through the wood pile at the store, but it will make a huge difference when you're actually building, and it will save you a lot of headaches. Oftentimes at first glance, a board looks straight, and the fact that it's actually bowed or has some warping isn't always obvious. The trick to knowing for sure is to hold the board up towards your face and have the other end on the ground. Then look at it with a downward angle, and this will allow you to see if it's bowing at all. Another tip from what we found in our experience is that often at the local home improvement stores like Lowe's or Home Depot, they usually tend to stock up a few days before the weekend, so around Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and that's a good time to go pick your lumber out. Often if you go on a Sunday or a Monday, the selection can be really picked over. So that's one thing to keep in mind. It can vary from location to location, but that's just what we found over time. You can also check out the lumber selection at your local lumber yard for more selections and better pricing too. Tip number 5 is to learn how to use a few essential tools. I know that when it comes to learning power tools, it can be really overwhelming, and knowing what tools to buy and which ones are the most important can be just totally overwhelming because there really are so many awesome tools out there on the market, and if you were to invest in many of them up front, it's going to be really expensive. I recommend just investing in the essential ones that you really need to get started. And once you learn them, you'll be more comfortable and you'll be able to easily learn how to use other tools. I have a video already on my favorite essential tools to get started with woodworking. I'll link that below as well. I will say that the KREG jig, which creates pocket holes, has been one of my most favorite tools, and it's really allowed me to broaden the projects that I do without having to do a lot of other joinery techniques, and it's definitely one of the easier tools to learn and get started with. When it comes to actually learning how to use the power tools, I would say always refer to your tool guide and safety manual. That's the most important, but you can also watch YouTube videos. There are so many different videos out there on how to use specific models and types of tools that they can be really helpful to watch. And then once you do those two things, actually just trying the tool out for yourself and using it is really the best way to learn how to use it and get comfortable with it. Tip number 6 is to sand your wood. Oftentimes, sanding your wood can be overlooked. It's not as exciting as the actual building of your project, and I really dislike sanding. But I will say that it makes a huge difference in the final outcome of your project. And the final finish of your wood project is really like the frosting on your cake. It can totally make or break your project. So if your wood is properly prepared and sanded well, then it's gonna take the finish, whether you do stain or paint or just like a clear top coat, it will just turn out so much better than if you skip this step. There are all different ways to sand wood, but one of the easiest ways to do it is to just use an orbital palm sander and start with 60 or 80 grit and then move up from there and do 120 or 150 and then finish it off with 220. Also, make sure to remove the sawdust on your project. I really like using tack cloth for this. Tip number 7 is really easy. It's just pick a beginner woodworking project and get started. Really, just getting in there and trying things out and learning is going to be the best way to get started with woodworking. Well, I hope this video has been helpful. If you have any questions, please let me know below this video, or you can ask over in our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/woodworking for the home. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and please subscribe to my channel for more fun DIY and home decor videos.